the intro you talk about when you're saying
yeah, like New York in the mid '80s was a total race relations disaster.
Which I don't think a lot of people remember.
Yeah, I mean,
poignantly in the book, you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like the Howard Beach incident was in the mid '80s, and the cops, choked out that one kid who was doing graffiti, and there's just was very, very tense, race-wise in New York City, and to have like such a, explicitly political rap group come out of, that climate, was, clearly meant something to a lot of people to have that, a voice so evocative.
Yeah, to put New York in some context, and Chris does a great job laying it out in the book. But you talk about Michael Griffiths and Howard Beach. You talk about Eleanor Bumpers, who's an older black woman who gets shot. She's overweight, and the way that gets covered. Of course, by 1988, we get Yusef Hawkins. In 1989, the context for what becomes the first black mayor of New York City. I'm a Bronx cat, right? So I'm living through much of this, right? And you mentioned Bernard Getz, which is a case I think folks don't remember anymore. This is December of '84, and basically a white psychopath. It gets challenged by a couple of about 4 or 5 of them teenage boys, and he just opens up on them. And so on the one hand, he gets celebrated as a vigilante, right, in New York City, and at the same time, black folks are like, what's up? Again, this is the context that creates Al Sharpton. The only reason why we know who Al Sharpton is because of that moment. And I'm in college at this point in time, right? And one of the things that's happening on the national stage, of course, Jesse Jackson runs for president. And while most of us who are like 19, 21, 22 years old, Jesse Jackson's cool, but it's when he started running with Louis Farrakhan that things changed, right? And a different kind of energy. And I think what happened in terms of rap music at that period of time, all of us now are listening to Farrakhan, and we're sitting in the E185 section of the library, which is where all the African American studies shit is, right? And we're reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and we're going back and we're reading all this black arts poetry of Baraka and folks like that. And suddenly we're saying, why can't we have music that reflects these kind of political energies that suddenly we're feeling? And the next thing you know, we hear Public Enemy, it's like, okay, that's it, right? This is the soundtrack for this political moment, right?
And the most amazing thing is that it brought the black studies section of the library to white kids in the suburbs.
Absolutely.
It's like here's an area that so many of these scabby metalhead kids from different parts of the country would have never been exposed to.
Well, I'd like to answer this. Without Rick Rubin, me and Rick Rubin and my crew making a deal of Rick Rubin leaving us alone, making sure that we were autonomous, a lot of these things wouldn't have come to pass. Because everybody, even Russell, thought we were nuts. And so, matter of fact, speaking of Bernard Getz, we wanted to call You're Gonna Get Yours, You're Gonna Get Yours, spelling it like Bernard Getz, which was G-O-E-T-Z. So, we wanted to, but anyway, Brian Hargrove, the band leader's here, at this time, and actually he was a fellow New Yorker from Hollis, Queens, and has led many, groups over the last 25 years, so he can speak for himself. But he was a New Yorker, especially at that time. A lot of stuff was going on.
Well, I was a New Yorker. I still am. I just found out about this panel 5 minutes ago with Chuck Colby, but just hearing what I'm hearing, I'll just say this.
I said, get your ass down.
And I came quick. I was living in New York at the time. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico now, but it was harsh. It was harsh, and Public Enemy, I was a fan of Public Enemy before Chuck asked me if I would come on board and lead the new components of the band. I was a huge fan. Probably, I don't think I knew anybody who was a bigger fan of Public Enemy than I was. And the band, Public Enemy really helped us get to where we are today, I feel strongly, with regard to having a black president. And I said this in Australia. We did an interview right after the election, I think, right, in Australia. And Chuck sort of looked at me like, maybe I never thought about that. But a lot of my friends were just not into anything hip-hop or rap related, whether they were black or white. And a lot of white folks, I think, and you guys can let me know, because I'm speculating here. I see a lot of white faces here, so you let me know if you're old enough. I think Public Enemy made the issues of black people somewhat tolerable for a lot of white folks that were uncomfortable and sort of understood it. And I think a generation far enough away from these recent elections so that some white men could feel comfortable. Well, maybe a black guy ain't so bad. I think Public Enemy had a lot to do with that.
And you gotta think about these kids, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Don't let me talk over your block. You gotta think these kids who were, 8, 10, 12 years old, when Public Enemy was first putting out those records, they're voting in their first, second, third elections now. It's like, it's to our point where there's like an entire generation of white kids who, the issues of black politics have always just been politics. It's always just been part of our of living in society right now. It's, I've never known a time where this wasn't part of the discourse. I'm going to be 31 years old. I've never known a time where this wasn't part of the narrative.